Shalom, Yasharallah. This is your brother Dawada, coming back at you with this here truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praise unto YAHAWAH, BAHASHIM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHIM, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of great MILLSTONE that taught us this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for Yakim pushing this truth and sincerity on the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. So we're going to jump into this here article from RT that says, "Not you too. U.S. warns India against Russian S-400 ahead of Pompeo's visit." All right. And normally we read articles like this dealing with Turkey. But nevertheless, as we see the prophecies being fulfilled of Ezekiel 38 of Russia being prepared for thyself and preparing for that great company that's assembling unto thee. All right. We see these prophecies coming to pass. All right. So we're going to read through this here article and I'm going to grab some scriptures dealing with this here prophecy coming to pass. It says from RT News, "Not you too. U.S. warns India against Russia S-400 ahead of Pompeo's visit." It says, although Washington already has its plate full trying to dissuade Turkey from buying the S-400 air defense system, it's also urging India against buying the Russian missile system just ahead of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit. All right. And it's not just Turkey and India that's trying to buy these here weapons. All right. You also have, I believe China bought these weapons. Venezuela has the S-300 system. I believe Saudi Arabia was talking about buying it as well. All right. So you're starting to see a lot of Russia becoming a supplier of weapons, all right, to these other nations, all right, whereas America used to be the #1 supplier of weapons to everybody else, all right. So it says, having already told India not to go through with the S-400 deal last week, a State Department official issued a reminder to the U.S. allies and partners on Friday, backing up the suggestion that was with a veiled threat. With respect to the S-400, we're urging all of our allies and partners, India included, to forego transactions with Russia that risk triggering the CAATSA sanctions, the unnamed official said during a background briefing, referring to the 2017 law that threatens to sanction other countries for buying Russian weapons. This is a time we will be encouraging India to look at alternatives. All right. And really, there is no alternative, because basically you either going to buy where everybody was buying from, which was from America. All right. Now Russia's being brought back to that superpower. All right. Now they have things that they can export now. All right. So it says, jumping down, the warning comes after New Delhi made clear that it had no plans to scrap the multi-billion-dollar deal it signed with Moscow last October, while the U.S. remains one of India's top weapons supplier. Friday's message was yet another indication that the expected waiver for the S-400 may not be forthcoming. All right, because why? The Lord is working on the minds of these here kings, man. He's the one who's putting the thoughts into their minds to what to do and what moves to make. All right. It says the Russian missiles will likely be one of the issues brought up when the top U.S. diplomat arrives in New Delhi next week. Pompeo's visit will primarily focus on improving diplomatic ties and cooperation between the U.S. and populous South Asian nation and the populous South Asian nation. India may have strategic trade authorization tier 1 status in Washington, but Turkey is a full-fledged NATO member. Yet Washington has had little luck talking Ankara into giving up on the S-400. Turkey has repeatedly snubbed threats of sanctions and even warned that it would be kicked out of the F-35 program if the deal with Moscow goes through, which really America itself cannot be the only, you can't have just one nation try to throw them up out of this NATO agreement. All right. This is the things that basically America came up with. But nevertheless, you're seeing all these things coming to pass, which we're going to grab them in the scriptures. All right. Last September, the U.S. used the CAA-TSA legislation to justification to sanctions China's defense ministry over their S-400 purchase. However, it has yet to sanction an existing or prospective ally such as India. While Washington has desperately tried to entice countries to purchase the M104 Patriot system instead, it appears that for many countries, the market has already spoken. All right. And ultimately, like I said, let's get it in the scriptures. This is the plan of the Most High. All right. And the Most High is going to put his spirit on these leaders of these nations to fulfill his will. All right. So we're going to go to the book of Proverbs. I believe it's chapter 21. Yep. Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of YAHWAH. As the rivers of water, he turneth it wherever so he will. All right. Now, the kings are speaking of basically the leaders of these nations. All right. Your presidents and things like that. All right. And it says the king's heart is in the hand of YAHWAH, as the rivers of of water, he turneth it wherever so he will. All right. So just like if you see a river flowing, all right, that water's going to go in whatever direction the banks of the river take it. You know, if you got a river that's flowing straight down in a straight line, then all of a sudden the banks of the river curve to the left, the water's going to go to the left. All right. And if it curved to the right, then the water's going to go to the right. So that's how the Most High is. His hands are pretty much like the river banks, and the kings are just flowing down the path which the river banks is set forth for it. All right. But I'm going to go from there to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38. All right. This is Ezekiel 38, and I'm going to start at verse 2. It says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith Yahweh power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn thee back. You know, this is speaking about Russia. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. All right. Speaking of bringing them back to this, bringing them back into that superpower that they once was, you know, as the USSR, the U.S. Soviet states of Russia, you know, the Soviet Union. All right. They had it was a bigger landmass. They had, you know, the countries that surrounded it now pretty much was a part of Russia. All right. They was a massive military power. All right. They was like, you know, basically the only military that Hitler feared in World War II. He was fearing an invasion from Russia. All right. That was the only people that was pretty much dominating against him. And really the only other military that was a dominating force at that time basically was Germany. All right. It had to take basically the allies against them to be able to take them out. You see what I'm saying? But nevertheless, the scriptures here is talking about Russia's going to be brought back to that same state. All right. Where they was going to be a big powerhouse, because after World War II, you had the Cold War take place. And during the Cold War, that was when, you know, basically America was going in, and they was basically at war with Russia, but it wasn't like a hot war where they were shooting and killing people. But nevertheless, they was you know, disrupting their infrastructure and economics, just like how Cuba is right now. You know, the reason that Cuba's stuck, you know, pretty much in the 50s is because of the sanctions and things that America has placed on Cuba, to where they can't really deal with any of these other countries, so that their imports and exports is very low. All right. Same thing was going on with Russia. All right. Their economy was, was attacked. All right. The people's minds, you know, with the propaganda and stuff, like how they doing when they try to go in these other countries, like Venezuela, for instance. You know, they put sanctions on Venezuela and make it hard for them to recoup the money from the oil exports, which is the number one income that they have for their whole country. You know, so if 90% of the country's income is coming from oil imports, and America got sanctions on it to where they can't even get their money back, what do you think is going to happen to the economy in Venezuela? It's going to crumble. All right. So now once the economy crumbles in Venezuela, what do you think the morality of the people is going to be like? You know, and all they got to do is do some propaganda, like, oh, you know, Nicolas Maduro is the reason that your people are starving. Now the people are all demoralized and doing all kind of crazy shit and just popping off and overthrowing their leaders because of all the propaganda that America is speaking. All right. So but going into all these different things, you know, this is pretty much what happened to Russia. All right. At the fall of the Soviet Union, you know, during the Cold War time. All right. Their infrastructure was depleted. Their military was depleted. Their morality was depleted, and their economics was depleted. All right. But verse 4 says, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. All right. So what was going on in that scenario? This was basically the time in when Vladimir Putin got in office. All right. First thing first, he started working on their economy. All right. Getting their economy back up, then getting their infrastructure back up, then getting their imports and exports back up. Then after all that, you know, they further started getting their money back up or whatnot, however you want to say it. But then they started going into developing military weapons. All right. Mostly, well, not really mostly, but they got defensive and offensive weapons. All right. But nevertheless, it says, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. So now you're starting to see Russia is going back into that Soviet Union state, is that world superpower. All right. A nation that is importing and exporting goods and resources around the world. You know, they're trying to build that Nord Stream 2 pipeline to run and export oil over to Germany and stuff like that. All right. Not only that, which we're about to read into, they're also developing and selling these weapons to these other countries. All right. That's what this here article is going into. Not only is Turkey trying to buy it, but also you have India trying to buy it. You have China, who already purchased it. Venezuela has got it. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of these countries just trying to get these weapons. I believe Saudi Arabia had threatened to try to get this thing as well, too. But Donald Trump said they wouldn't survive 2 weeks without America as their ally. All right. So it says, verse 4, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. I will bring thee forth in all thy army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So going into this, it says he would bring them forth, them and all their army, horses and horsemen, all all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, all right? Even a great company, keep in mind that word great company, with bucklers and shields, all right? So a lot of the things they're talking about here is pretty much armor, all right? Armaments, all right? Now, what do you think the number one export weaponry wise that Russia is exporting to these other countries? All right, it's these missile defense systems, whether it be the S-250, the S-150, the S-200, S-300, S-400. All right, they got talks with trying to develop have a partnership with Turkey to develop the S-500. All right, which I believe they already have the S-500 developed. All right, but nevertheless, you know, these are the main exports when it comes to weaponry that Russia is exporting out to these other countries, is these missile defense systems. All right. And this is what you see the big stir up in the scriptures about, or not the scriptures, but in the news about, with all these different countries trying to buy the S-400, S-300 system from Russia. All right. But what it's going to all get worse, because it's prophesied in the scriptures that this is what Russia was going to do. All right. At the end all be all, Russia was going to become a guardian to these other nations, all right, and they was going to come up against Babylon the Great and destroy her, all right? So let me continue on reading. Let me read verse 4 again, because it just rolls through 5 and 6. It says, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thy army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, which is Iran, okay? Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Tomargah and the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee, going into what, Syria and Turkey, all right? But nevertheless, as you see here that Russia was going to be a guard unto them, it says, let me read verse 7 again. Be thou prepared, going into what? Make your technological weaponry advances, all right? Advance your military at this here point in time, all right? Like I said, at the fall of the Soviet Union, all right, Russia's military was very much depleted. Their whole infrastructure was depleted. The only thing good that they had over there was, you know, the other half of the majority of the world's nuclear weapons, and then also that dead hand system they have over there, which is basically a system that would shoot off a missile that would trigger off to shoot off all the other missiles to hit all of America or all of Russia's enemies, in case there was ever a nuclear strike on the mainland of Russia. All right. So those was basically the only two things that they had. And like America was the only was the other superpower with the other main amount of weapons. So let's say there was 100 nuclear weapons out there. You know, you have let's say 40 of the weapons belong to America. 40 of the weapons belong to Russia. So the majority of the weapons are between Russia and America, which leave 20 extra weapons out there, which each of these other nations may have 1 or 2 weapons, so on and so forth, you know. However, there was way more weapons than that. But just as an example, you know, splitting 100 up, you know, divided by 2, you give them 40 apiece, 40 and 40 apiece, leaving you 20 for the rest of these nations to have, you know, to pick apart from. All right. But it says, let me go from there to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1 and verse 7. It says, all of the men, this is talking about Esau, Edom, all right? It says, all the men of thy confederacy, all right? All the men that's joined together with you, all the conglomeration of the nations that's there with you, your allies and your partners, all right? Like, as we was reading in the article, it says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee, and they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is no understanding in him. All right. So what does it say? It says all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. So all your allies are actually going to bring you out to the battlefield, you know, make you have to sit there and fight it out. And you can see these things happening with countries like Turkey. You know, they say, look, if you keep doing this, if you buy this here system, we're going to kick you up out of NATO, and we're going to take the F-35 away from you. And then you're going to be an enemy to America. Eventually, we're going to have to duke it out. All right. But what? This is that snare that's being laid up under him, because why? Turkey is how do I say? Turkey helped manufacture components for the F-35 fighter jet for them. All right. So, see, America's not the only, how do I say? America's not building this plane 100% by themselves. All right. But nevertheless, Turkey is building like the cockpit, the heads up display, and some other parts of this damn plane, part of the landing gear and stuff like that, which means that they would have to have other people help invest in this investment project, other people to help build this here damn plane. And that's less people that's going to have this plane that's going to be on their side fighting using these planes. All right. So, and not only that, Turkey's a great spot strategically for America to have in the Middle East. All right. A lot of those bombings that they was having over in the Middle East, well, they was launching them out of Turkey. All right. Now, also in Turkey, you got a lot of America's nuclear weapons over there. Nuclear bombers are set over there. All right. So if they become allies, then what? They lose that strategic spot. All right. And Turkey is a pretty big place. All right. let me go from there to let me see, Jeremiah chapter, what is it, 50 or 51? This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 9. It says, "For lo, I will raise the cause to come up and up against Babylon, an assembly of great nations from the north country." And we was just reading about that in the book of Ezekiel. All right, in the book of Ezekiel 38, talking about prepare thyself in that great company that's basically along with thee. All right. So it says, "For lo, I will raise the cause to come up against Babylon, an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. The arrow shall be as a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain." All right. So going into this, that basically you'll understand that all of America's allies are going to wind up switching sides on them and wind up joining the side of Russia. All right. And they're going to all wind up taking America out. All right. So I just wanted to bring this here out throughout the scriptures to go into this here article, because why? It's not going to just be a Turkey that's going to start buying these Russian made weapons, but what? All of America's allies, they're going to eventually turn on America. All right. And Russia's going to continue to sell more and more of these missile defense systems to these other nations. All right. Let me grab another precept real quick, and then I'm gonna close out. This is Isaiah 14 and 10. It says, "All they shall speak unto thee and say, Art thou become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?" All right, because why? I'm gonna grab another precept as well too. These other nations, let me grab that first because it'll go well. Joel chapter 3 and 9. All right, it says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears, let the weak say I am strong." All right, so this is what's going on right now. All these different smaller, weaker nations are now getting weaponry from a strong nation, which is Russia. Russia has weapons that are pretty much rendering America's weaponry obsolete. All right, America got that F-35 stealth fighter jet that the S-400 system could pretty much see and shoot down. All right, the same with their drones and things like that. So what? Now all these weaker nations are saying, "Are thou become weak as we, or are we become on the same playing field?" Like, what you scared for? I thought you was the big bad dog on the block. I thought you could take us all out. Why are you scared of little old me now? Obviously, we pretty much on the same playing field now. Are you become weak as we now? All right, so now all these different nations are now also preparing themselves militarily wise to go to battle with Babylon the Great. All right, and they're gonna ultimately judge and destroy Babylon the Great. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out with that. Lord willing, this was edifying into the elect. Until next time, I say, call halal Yahawah, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI, Bahashim, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of great millstone that taught us his truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you, Akim, pushing his truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. Until next time, I say, stay strong and shalom.